All right, now that that is out of the way, hello and welcome. Today, we're here to talk about solutions to our current housing supply crisis. And specifically, what I'm really excited to share and to talk about in more detail is how we think that empowering a variety of users at municipalities and in the housing sector with all sorts of planning data can optimize and accelerate our housing supply. So we will start with some quick introductions. My name is Monica Yeroshanik. I'm the managing director of the new Esri Canada division that's focused on solutions for urban planning and housing. So this is a brand new division that was just launched in January of this year. Prior to joining Esri, I was the CEO and co-founder of Ratio City. I'm joined today by Catherine Stanbridge, who is the industry engagement manager. Catherine?
Hi, everyone. As Monica said, my name is Catherine. So my role today is going to be keeping an eye on the chat and the Q&A. So if you have anything, please feel free to throw it in there. And we'll also be launching some polls.
Thank you. All right, so what are we going to cover today? We do know that Canada is facing a major housing affordability and supply crisis, and we see it every single day in the news. There's been lots of opinion pieces about how and why we ended up here. I don't want to spend too much time on that because we all know that story. We've heard about it ad nauseum. What I do want to spend our time together talking about is our solution thesis. And again, spoiler alert, it is going to involve data and collaboration. And I do want to spend most of the session today introducing you to Ratio City, which is, again, one of the latest additions to the Esri Canada family of products. And by the end of the session, I'm hoping that you'll have a bit of an understanding of how a handful of sample use cases demonstrate this idea of positioning data and collaboration at the center of our thinking about housing supply, and how this can help us get us closer to increasing, getting the types of housing outcomes that we all want to see. I'm personally a very visual learner, and I enjoy showing much more than telling. So I'm going to show you how our various features and functions can be used by both the public sector and the private sector to increase data transparency and reduce risk. So I'm hoping to keep the presentation part of today's session to 45 minutes or so that we've got enough time for Q&A at the end. All right. But we do have to start, we've got to start somewhere. And so again, there is a generation defining housing supply and affordability crisis in front of us. In terms of demand, our populations keep growing. We've got an increased demand for housing. We've got a constrained housing supply between long approval times, high construction costs, construction labor shortages, NIMBYism, macroeconomics, you name it. We have issues, constraining our supply. The CMHC has estimated that the gap between this demand and supply will cost over $1 trillion to fix. And so this is an enormous number. And again, if we're really frank with ourselves, we have to recognize that neither the public sector nor the private sector can do this alone. It is going to require all hands on deck. And I know that we've got lots of people on the call today, and we've got a really great variety of professional experiences. We've got a lot of planners, and we've got a lot of GIS professionals, and we've got other folks that are interested in this space. And so to make sure that we're all on the same page, I'm just going to spend a couple of minutes just going through and laying out some basic concepts and some terminology just to make sure that we're consistent. I'm going to highlight the traditional planning processes that municipal planning departments need to undertake in order to support building stronger communities for all of us. And this is an oversimplification, but the intention here is more about positioning the discussions that we know we can't address everything all at once. We'll have other programming and other webinars to touch on some of these other topics, but I just want to know what we're talking about today. All right. So on the left, one of the major responsibilities when we think of what planning departments do is what they need to do is review and revise planning policies. So again, our planners, they will do comprehensive reviews of our zoning bylaws, of our official plans, community plans, neighborhood plans, and they're going to make sure that these plans and policies align with the growth objectives that we need to meet, and also that they align with the infrastructure capacities that we have in order to support that growth. And so this is how we plan as a society plan for the future. What is this neighborhood? What is this area? What is the city going to look like 5 or 10 years from now? And so this is very important work, and it's very complex work. The next sort of set of roles and responsibilities, and what we're going to be talking about mostly today is that sort of this next section in the middle. There'll be a development group, at a municipality, and they're responsible for meeting with existing landowners, real estate developers, other stakeholders who are interested in building, within their municipality on sites, based on today's policies, based on today's enacted zoning bylaws and whatnot. And so in the really early stages of a potential, housing project or any kind of a project, frankly, the landowner or the developer will meet with a planner for a pre-application meeting to discuss what is possible and identify the major issues that might impact, a very specific site. Real estate and reality are very seldom simple. And so there might be a variety of planning policies that apply. There might be regional policies or provincial policies that have changed recently, because again, we've all seen that happening. And there might also be less obvious issues. And so the key is to get these folks all in the same room early on to have a series of discussions and consultations. Once the landowner or stakeholder or developer, has that information, they will get their consultant team, their architects, their planners, their engineers together, and they will do a more detailed design for a specific project and then submit a development application. And once that application is submitted to the municipality, it enters a process. And so, once it's submitted, it then needs to be reviewed. It needs to be circulated to various departments. And then all of that submitted material needs to be, analyzed to make sure that it is appropriate and meets all the requirements. It's a complex process. It can take a significant amount of time and involve a lot of people. Once applications are through, there'll be a decision made. Either yes, the application is reviewed, or it's rejected, or again, there's some sort of back and forth and it needs to be amended and then resubmitted. And what we're seeing is also more and more value being put on the sort of third part of the process. We're starting to see more and more demand for both internal and public-facing, housing dashboards. So we're also seeing more and more demand for housing data outcomes to be reported up to higher levels of government. And so as we move through this process, we start looking at the future. What our city is going to look like? What can we build today based on current policies? And how does this translate to actual housing outcomes? The federal government did announce last year their $4 billion housing accelerator fund for municipalities. And it had set out a number of high-level objectives as well that can be grouped, into these themes. Each municipality, submitted an application for some funding and outlined a series of projects that they would undertake if given the funding in order to meet these high-level objectives. So again, at the highest level, one of the, main objectives of the fund is to eliminate zoning restrictions, to, develop new community improvement plans, and to revise guidelines to encourage additional density in appropriate areas. So again, that all falls under the how do we review and revise our current policies. In that second section, the second theme sort of relates to, again, existing policies and existing processes. So, making land available for affordable housing. We're expecting the federal budget, being tabled today. We're expecting an announcement about how federal land will be made available for housing. So again, how can we look for sites within our existing portfolios that have the right zoning, and the right conditions and the right infrastructure to support additional housing. And there's also a theme about increasing process efficiency and enhancing development approvals processes. The third part is recognizing that this HAF funding is going to be parceled out over time. And in order to get the follow-on funding, municipalities will need to report on progress and housing outcomes that are achieved. And so again, there is a reporting component to this as well. So again, very high level, but these processes now also align with a number of the products and solutions that this new planning and housing division at Esri is also really, really interested in. So we're looking forward to digging into some of the other processes and other webinars, but today we're going to be focusing on this middle part, the pre-application processes and development application review. So our thesis is that in order to solve this housing supply problem, we need to get everyone at the same table, looking at the same data as early on in the process as possible. The key is making sure that all all these professionals who are involved in city building have the right data at their fingertips to support their decision making. So we're going to need that data in order to support these policy changes, but we also need data to support the general public and the housing sector, again, these real estate professionals, to understand planning processes and policies, especially because they're changing so fast. And we also need increased data access across the board to reduce risk and align everyone to the same outcomes. It's a whole bunch of words, but what does this mean? How do we do this? So this is where I want to introduce a little bit of background about Ratio City. So again, it's one of the newest additions to the Esri Canada family. And the way we describe it is a series of really easy to use data and analysis tools for urban planners, real estate developers to understand where they can build and what they can build. And it works right out of the box. There's very little setup required, no in-depth implementation. It allows for some customization, which again, I'll show you today. And it's a online web app, with a basic subscription type model. And the core value that our users have told us repeatedly that they get is that, again, all the data that they need at their fingertips. So again, this idea of data as a service, I like to describe it as batteries included, and all that data is bundled into a really easy to use and intuitive interface. So I've got this sort of summary of the whole landscape of users that we've been working with since we started Ratio City and that we're targeting. And we target both the public and private sector. And right now, frankly, most of our revenue actually comes from the private sector, from those commercial real estate professionals. The other thing I want to note about our users is a lot of these professionals that are doing this day-to-day work are actually GIS adjacent. They are, real estate developers. It's the development manager at a REIT or an asset manager. These might be land use professionals, professional consultants like urban planners or urban designers, architects, engineers, municipal lawyers, as well as city staff, specifically the city staff doing, preparing for pre-application consultations and doing development review. And the problem that we're hearing from across the industry is that, again, we're in a time of rapid change. Policies are changing on a weekly, monthly basis. And even for these highly trained professionals, it's really hard to keep up. So, and fundamentally, I think in order to increase that housing supply, we need to help these professionals figure out, where can we build and what can we build? And our solution, brings together the data on demand in a really easy to use interface. The benefit that we see is that by increasing data transparency, we can help save time, which is a huge non-renewable resource, but also reduce risk. So we've got three main modes. I'm going to switch to a demo in a second, but the three main modes that I'm going to be talking about are our Explore mode, which helps users explore and understand land use policies and urban structure. Our Locate mode, which helps locate strategic, identify opportunities for infill development. And our Develop mode, which allows our users to analyze sites that see built form impact and actual potential housing outcomes in seconds with very minimal training. All right, so I'm going to be switching to a demo, but I want to set up three hypothetical use cases that I'm going to be chatting about before I make the switch. So I've arbitrarily chosen a number of cities just to demonstrate how Ratio City works. So these are all based on open data, which is in the public domain. I'm excited to be able to zoom across the country to show off how our data catalog has expanded in the last 6 months. We did start out in southwestern Ontario, but since joining Esri Canada, we have now brought on data for about 40 cities across the country from east to west. And I also want to share that, as a result of this new planning and housing division, we've been started to doing a bit of a listening tour and having in-depth discussions with municipal planners across the country. And we're starting to see the same challenges. The details may be different on the East Coast than the West Coast, but some themes are definitely emerging. So again, these use cases are sort of based on general themes. So the first one we're going to go through is we've got an example of a hypothetical planner named Emily at the City of Vancouver who needs to prep for a pre-app meeting. The second example is we're going to be looking at identifying sites that might be appropriate for housing in Calgary. So we'll do a quick jump to Calgary. And also we're looking at, how do we identify city-owned parcels potentially? So I've got an example in Victoria that I want to show you. The third case is going to be looking at a private sector. So, how does our developer, our friends in development, how do they actually do this work? And what information do they need access to? All right, so now is the technical part where I have to change screens. So bear with me as I get myself set up here. All right. So again, we've got the map of Canada, and I'm going to start with a hypothetical example. So if we've got a planner who works at the City of Vancouver. She was contacted by a landowner who wants to understand what policies apply to their site, and she needs to prepare for this pre-application meeting. So she wants to quickly just understand get an overview. So what she can do is type in an address here. So
Sorry, Monica, you're not sharing your screen.
I'm not. Okay, I think I hit the right button, but let me try that again.
Yes, try turning it off and on again. Yes, thank you to the folks in the chat. Appreciate it. Just a reminder, if you do have any questions, feel free to pop them in the Q&A section just so that we don't miss any and I can address them in there. And if you have chat request, like we can't see the screen, which was perfect, pop it in the chat. There you go, Monica, you're good.
You're good this time? That was on. Okay. All right. All right, we are zooming into Vancouver. Okay, so I have an address here that we will just take a look at. And again, what I want to do is just sort of show you how all of this information now comes together for this use case. As we zoom into an address, looking at our explore mode here, the data that's available for the map in question is going to update. And so I can see here under municipal policy, there's the Vancouver bylaw. So I'm going to just turn that on very briefly. I'm going to click on this site that I'm looking at, and I can see here that this land use category is comprehensive development, and there's a code DD, downtown development, that applies in this case. And so this link will take us right back to the City of Vancouver's zoning bylaw, where I can get some additional detail about what these codes might mean. And so what you're thinking now is like, oh, that's great. It's a web viewer. Cool. All right. But where's this information coming from? So all of our data does have the metadata exposed. And so by selecting any of our data in the list, you can get some information about where this information is coming from, when it was last updated. So here's a quick description. There is, when it was last updated, and this link will take you back to, in this case, the open data portal at the City of Vancouver. What we do is, because our users are active in the space, we know the data that they're interested in. And so what we do is we curate the data. So we go to everyone's open data sets and we bring all this information together. So it's already set up. But it's not just about zoning. Again, anybody who's a planner understands that cities are complex. There are lots of factors that impact our cities. So in addition to, the zoning, there might be area specific development plans, or there might be higher level, community plans that apply. There might be community boundaries. There might be, general policies that allow for taller buildings. Again, Vancouver is famous for its beautiful mountain views. And so there are a number of view cones that protect those views. And so we're starting to bring all that information together from a variety of sources. There's major planning policy. And this is only now talking about, from the municipal side. But, Vancouver is also part of a larger region. And so there are also regional policies that might apply. So I'm going to sort of just zoom out. And so whether it's the regional urban centers or the regional land uses or urban containment zones. Again, we want to see, transit-oriented development. And so, there's also new policies that have to do with TOD areas. And so again, we're starting to bring all this information together, whether it's provincial policy, regional policy, local policy, and putting it all in one place. In order to make this easier to see, I'm going to just turn off a few more layers and also talk about some of the other information that we're interested in. So, development activity, what other development permits are out there? What's been, what are active? What's been archived? So again, we've got a snapshot of some of these projects with additional detail. And again, this is coming from the Vancouver Shape Your City website. We're also looking at public assets. So where are our city parks, and where are our schools, and where are our bike paths? We're looking at transit, both current and proposed. And so let's look at where all of our proposed stations are, so that we can start seeing, how what kind of infrastructure capacity we've got for increasing our populations. Now that's a lot of information, and our friend Emily has, she's got a lot of stuff to toggle through, but we can make it easier for her. So instead of having to go, layer by layer to see what applies, she can also select the site that she's interested in. So in this case, we're going to take a look at the site and we're going to, select it. And what's going to happen is automatically we will intersect this specific site with all the data that we have that describes this site. And so now under this info panel, we can see, this site is just under, 9,000 square feet. There's a number of other city-owned properties nearby under the zoning code. Here's the different policies that might apply and all of those links back to the source. Here's some of the provincial policies, here's some of the regional policies. So all that information is at her fingertips. Again, we saw all those view cones, but there are a handful that do intersect with this site. And so, I love the idea of a view of Magic and Wizard Peak from the park. And so, we are aware that this is the specific view cone that impacts this site. All right, I'm going to take a pause there, and we're going to go to our first poll.
All right, so the first poll question is, how do GIS professionals and city planners currently exchange data at your organization? And then followed up with what data has been identified as critical for development application review in your area. We appreciate all of your answers and all of the questions that are coming in through the Q&A. I see the next one and I'm making my way to it. All right. I think we're probably good to close this one off, Yatsik. Thank you. All right, so it looks like folks need a lot of planning policy, infrastructure capacity, and demographics. Very interesting. Thank you.
Thanks all. We're trying to make this a bit interactive so that we can learn from you as well at the same time. All right, so we did a quick overview of, again, how the data at Ratio City works. Again, we aggregate the data from a variety of open data sources, and we maintain the data as well. So we do a quarterly data audit, and we make sure that that information is up to date. We're also moving to automate a lot of our data maintenance. And so we are in the process of automatically checking and making sure that we are notified when any of the underlying data changes so that we can increase the speed of maintenance. However, at the bare minimum, we do look at our entire data catalog at least once per quarter, but we're looking to accelerate that in the future. All right, so the next use case is we talked a little bit about the Housing Accelerator Fund, and they're focused on creating high density housing near transit and eliminating some of the zoning restrictions, and also this idea of identifying sites for affordable housing. And so City of Calgary had an announcement that they got some funding back in November. And as part of that, they made a bit of a housing pledge that they were going to increase their housing supply by 35,000 new units in the next 10 years. So by my very simple math, that's about 3,500 units per year. So what does that actually look like? Where could these housing units potentially go? And so this is what I want to demonstrate next. And so in our locate tools, we've got some templates that make it possible to search through this data very strategically to identify these opportunities. All right, so we're going to use a template. We're going to be looking for a series of development sites, and we're going to be looking in the city of Calgary. And we're going to do a search that let's center it right on City Hall, and we'll do a sort of a 2-kilometer radius plus minus around City Hall. And we're going to look for underutilized sites. So let's see, how many sites are there, within this big red circle that are larger than 15,000 square feet, that have a zoning bylaw designation of, let's call it, again, this, commercial core, CC core, C core 1, C core 2, CCX. So again, these sort of mixed use policies that might be appropriate. and how many sites are underutilized, where the existing building footprint is less than 40% of the site. So again, where there's a lot of surface area that might be opportunities for infill. So these are the sort of three basic criteria that we've put in, and now we can run that search to see how many results meet those three criteria. And so we've, again, looked at all those data sets, and they're coming from a variety of sources. And so we've got 65, sites that meet those criteria. And again, I'm a realist and a bit of a cynic, and so I know that this is not as easy as all of that. But what I want to propose is that by putting all this information in one place and making it really easy, we can now refine this a little bit more. And again, we know that there's been lots of development activity in Calgary already, so we can now also, take a look at, where are the current development permits already being applied for, and we can now remove all of those from this search as well and rerun that search. And now let's see what kind of results we get. And so now we only get 18 sites that meet this criteria. And as a next step, we can now investigate any of these sites in a bit more detail. And by selecting them the same way that Emily did in Vancouver, we should be able to then pull up all of the policies and understand what other constraints might apply to any one of these sites. So just pulling up this report here. And so I can get all the information here about the size, about the different policy plans that might apply to this site, the site area, and all the rest of it. We can also generate a PDF report that will give you then a snapshot of adjacencies, for example, both in terms of the municipal development plan and the land use zoning plan. And all of that information would be summarized here with all of those links back to the source document. All right, so that's a very simple, example in Calgary. But you're saying to yourself, but again, I've got a mandate, I've got to find sites that the city owns. And I don't see city-owned sites on Ratio City. So how is this going to help me? So I'm going to zoom over to Victoria next. Victoria, BC. And here we go. And so again, similar to the other examples that I showed, we've got some data about the building footprints and the parcels and the zoning and the transit. And again, we'll just wait for the list here to update. So we can see all of this information. But what I don't see is, city-owned properties. But Victoria's got a great open data portal. And so, I can see that this information is available, but it's just not on Ratio City. So what I can do as a user is download this information. So I can download it from open data. And then using our data mode here, we've got the ability to also upload our own data. So I'm going to add this data directly in. And so I downloaded this information. I can now upload it here. And I'm just going to go through a few steps just to show you how simple this is, because again, I'm a non-technical GIS adjacent person myself. And so, here we've uploaded this GeoJSON. We will add our metadata here. So where is this information? Okay, so it's in Victoria. What's it called? So this is our Victoria city-owned parcels. This is coming from open data. Again, we can put the link right in here. We can add our last modified date and then add a description in here. The next step will recognize all of those fields that were associated with that open data and bring them in. And we can choose. We don't have to bring them all in. We can just choose. And we just need to go through and sort of customize, some units just to make sure that it comes in consistently. So I'm just going to review this and again, change some of these to, what should be text strings and go text string. And, area will be square meters and length will be meters. And now I missed one of them, but somewhere here. When let's deselect that. Here we go. This will now come in. It'll give me a quick preview of what that pop-up info may be, and I can attribute the inventory class as the definition. And I hit create layer, and it'll take about 35 seconds, and it will update. It'll then give me some options to style it. So I've already uploaded this information. And so when it comes in under a My Layers section. So this is now data that is only available to myself and my organization, and it's highlighted in green. So when I turn that on now, I can see all of those data sets. Again, the metadata that I just uploaded, and I can color code it by inventory class. And so I can see all of that come in. And it took me about, less than 2 minutes. And what's really, really cool is now this becomes also searchable. So in this case, I'm now going to do a custom search, and I'm going to search through those, Victoria City owned parcels. And again, I'm going to just do a large circle based, around City Hall. And I'm going to choose the filter. So I can search through all of those fields that I just uploaded for the data set. In this case, I'm just going to look for inventory class. So I'm going to select everything that is not a park, a road, or a school. And then I'm going to intersect that with, some of our zoning categories. So let's see, of those properties, how many are in a, central area zone or development zone or general commercial or multiple dwelling zone. And I'm also going to add transit. How many are close to local transit? So let's say within 250 meters of a bus stop. And let's run that search now and see what happens. Duh. Let me rerun that because I should get, oops, no. Oh, let's move that to the center. All right. I should get about 15 or so. There we go, 23. And those will come up both on a list and on a map. And now I can dig into any one of these and get some additional detail as well. All right, so that is some really quick site identification opportunities. I'm going to pause now for the next poll question. Catherine, over to you.
Yes, we are launching the poll. Just one moment. So perfect. Thank you, Jacek. So yeah, does your organization face any of the following challenges? Having to meet housing supply mandates or pledges, siloed data, limited staff resources, or city staff spending a lot of time educating residents. Monica, one thing I'll point out is that we did get a few questions about data privacy and security and access. So if we maybe want to address that, just in case folks are not following along with the Q&A.
Sure, fair enough. So while we're waiting for the Q&A to finish up, again, most of the data that we have pre-populated with, Ratio City with is in the public domain. So again, it's coming from open data sources, from a variety of places. So whether it's conservation authorities or municipalities or provinces or whatnot. So again, it is out there in the public domain. It is part of the engagement that governments are doing. We can also host private data. And so we do have a series of auth systems that protect our data. And again, when you upload your own data, it becomes private and only available to your organization. We've gone through, again, I am the non-technical person, but we have gone through various security protocols. And so we can talk to, again, municipal IT and security, data security folks to go through exactly how that is structured and how we protect your data. All right, here are the results.
Yeah, so it looks like limited staff resources is taking a strong lead there. We get that.
We get that. It makes sense. It again reflects a lot of what we're hearing in our conversations as well. All right, I think I'm right on schedule. And so I've got the third and final use case that I'm excited to go through. And so this is a bit more of a private sector use case. So our friend developer, Dan, he's a developer in Toronto. He's got an investment thesis. He works for a company that has capital to invest in transit-oriented, purpose-built rentals. That's great. Dan just got an email from his broker, and the broker says, hey, you know what? He knows a guy who owns a plaza. The owner, might be open to accepting an offer of $10 million. Is Dan interested? And so Dan needs to figure out whether or not this is an opportunity for him and his business to be able to do a development on this site. So the developer sends him an address and a quick snapshot. So this is what Dan's got to work with. So what happens next? All right, so what Dan needs to understand is how big of a building he can build and what the constraints are, because in order for him to figure out how much the land is worth, he needs to understand how many square feet he can build. Because if you imagine a piece of land that you build a 50-story building on will be more valuable than a piece of land you build a 5-story building on. So we're going to zoom now to a small plaza in Toronto. Here we go. All right. So this is what Dan needs to do. So he'll now use the develop mode here. And I will just make sure that I can see data sets to update here. Boom. There it is. All right, so he's going to select a parcel in Toronto, and he's going to select this site. And so again, by selecting the site, this will now intersect all the data that we've got about the site for him in one place. So we're going to take a look. What is going on with this site? And should Dan get excited about this or not? So we can see here that this site is about 21,000 square feet. There's an existing building on it, but it's pretty low. Again, we're starting to bring on some demographic data. So what's the average household income? What are people paying for shelter? We've got some information about the housing stock nearby. So how many detached houses are there? How many, apartment buildings are there? What's the neighborhood like? We can see the policy information. So we can see that under the zoning, it's a CR 2.5. And again, here's links to all of those policy texts in the subsections. We can see that the allowable height here is only 10 meters. But we can also see that under the official plan, it's PAPE is designated an avenue, which usually suggests, it's appropriate for mid-rise development. And we can start seeing that there's some apartment neighborhoods nearby. But what's really interesting for Dan is that, this is designated as a major transit station area, and that the province has designated this area as appropriate for additional densification. And why it's really exciting is because it turns out that there's a new subway station going in. It's not built yet, but it is in delivery. And so this all of a sudden becomes an opportunity. We can see, the provincial growth plans. We can see who the councillor is. Again, we can see what other development activity is happening nearby. We've got some market data. So what are average rents? What are condos selling for? What are active development permits nearby? What are other community planning applications nearby? Within 800 meters, where is the nearest ambulance and fire station? Where are the libraries? Where are the childcare centers? Where are the parks? Where are the places of worship? So again, thinking about these complete communities and being able to put all this information in one place. And we can see bike scores and walk scores, transit scores, and we can see that, there is a new station going in 55 meters away, as well as, a handful of bus stops right now. So this becomes potentially really interesting for Dan. But it's still got to figure out, is $10 million a good deal or not? And so what he needs to do is understand built form potential. And so this is sort of the next step that I just want to demonstrate very quickly. And so there's a disconnect, right? The zoning says 10.5 meters you're allowed, but we're also really 55 meters away from a new transit station. And, there's additional density that, could be appropriate here. And this is a major avenue. And so there's a need for some kind of discussion. And so what we're doing is we'll give Dan the tools to figure out, what does a tall building look like on the site? What does a mid-rise building look like on the site? I just want to be very clear. This is not as of right zoning. This is, again, looking at typical typologies for a municipality. So Toronto has some design guidelines that, outline some of these preset defaults. So again, we've preset those. But again, we can customize this and make this available for any other city who has other or different design guidelines. First thing we need to do, though, is define our frontages. So again, Dan's not an architect. He's got an MBA and he runs Excel spreadsheets. But what we need him to do is just select the frontages. It's a corner site. So let's select, these two sides as a front. And I'm going to just first, just to make it simple, I'm going to call this side a rear and this side is going to be a side. And then we can go in and override that as of right height of 10 meters and let's just see, what does 18 stories potentially look like on this site. And where before we saw all of that information about the, site, the planning policies and the urban structure around the area, now we can see development potential. So on this site, that's about 21,000 square feet. This 18-story building on a 4-story podium represents about 190,000 square foot of buildable area and, possibly 220 units. And again, it's very simple, but Dan can go by and modify this. And so he was walking around. He saw that these existing apartment buildings are set back a little bit from this street. So you know what? Maybe he's going to increase some of these setbacks. And so we can let's increase the front setback. So I'm going to march that podium back from the front line, and then I'm going to move the tower portion back a little bit as well. And so now that updates my statistics here, it updates my unit count, and so I can quickly see what the implications are of that. Maybe Dan knows that in past projects, they've done some really great family style penthouses on the roof. And so, maybe he wants to add, a bit of additional setback on the roof. And so, let's do a little bit of a penthouse on the top 2 floors and increase the setbacks a little bit there. So we can also, modify the massing and again, see the changes live in real time. But Dan still needs to figure out what he's going to say to the plaza owner. And so in addition to being able to customize whether it's the efficiencies or the average unit size or the parking ratios, Dan can put in what land value works for his pro forma. So based on his past experiences, based on his past projects, and based on his market research, he knows that perhaps he can bid $80 per square foot of buildable area for this site, which means that for this project, which represents about 6 times density, this is what $12 million would look like in terms of land value. So now he has an understanding that if he goes to talk to the landowner, this might actually work. However, there's no guarantees in life or in real estate. And so he needs additional certainty. So what he's going to do next is he needs to talk to his boss. He needs to talk to his investment committee. He needs to talk to his professional planner, his consultant team. And then he's also going to need to talk to the planner at the municipality. And so in addition to doing this kind of scenario modeling, he's going to model out various things. So he wants, this is his ideal scenario, but perhaps he also wants to see a very conservative scenario. So maybe he also wants to see what a mid-rise site looks like. And so by applying, again, some angular planes, starting at a variety of heights, we can see that now instead of 6 times density, this is what 4 times density looks like potentially. And now instead, we're only looking at about 120 units. But again, for Dan, if, on the same price per square foot basis, this means that the site is only worth $8.5 million. And so what he needs to do is to understand where his risk falls. But he also needs to have communication. So this is where this idea of collaboration comes in. And so Dan needs to tell a story. He needs to tell a story to his investment committee. He needs to tell a story to his consultant team, and he needs to tell the story to the municipal planner as well. So we've just launched some new tools for our users to be able to do a presentation about any site that they are doing analysis on. So it's essentially like a PowerPoint, but with maps as well, so that within Ratio City, he can now present to his investment committee. And again, he can just, go over, about the site, some details about the site size, add in some images, add in some notes. He can then choose to, share what the zoning is, and again, the adjacency. So, there's apartment right here, and this is mixed use. And again, he can do as many of these slides as possible. Here's a snapshot of the transit information. So here's that new station. This is an 800-meter radius around that station. And these are the boundaries of the major transit station area that has been defined. And again, he's going to present these 2 options. So, here's this mid-rise option that he was looking at. And, he can revise the setbacks and stepbacks and continue to revise it. And then he can also present, hit this other option as well. So this becomes a very easy way for, again, these industry professionals who are GIS adjacent to be able to model these various scenarios, understand the actual housing outcome, and model built form impact. Okay, I'm going to have to switch screens again. I think that sets us up for our 3rd poll, Catherine.
Yes, I have been busy answering questions. It is great. People are really engaged.
Awesome.
All right. So yeah, how are developers currently getting planning data from your municipality? All right. Yeah, lots of questions about which cities have data up on Ratio City. So at the end of the webinar, you're going to be invited to create a free trial account, and you will be able to see all of the cities that we have data for at the end of the webinar.
Please don't ask me to name 40 cities off the top of my head because I can't do it.
I was never going to, don't worry. All right. I think we're probably good on the poll. Perfect. Thank you. Emailing city staff directly.
Oh,
That is how we get
a lot of
data.
email correspondence.
Hmm. Hmm. Interesting.
Excellent. Okay, thank you all. So again, now next skill testing question. Here we go. Share. Okay, have I got the right screen up?
Yes, it's looking good.
Okay, excellent. All right, so I'm going to just do a quick overview. So just a quick recap. We talked about Emily in Vancouver, who's prepping for that pre-app meeting. She wants to understand all the applicable land use policies. And so this is how, again, the explore mode can help support her and help her understand all the urban structure that impacts the site. The next example we looked at was, strategic housing site identification in Calgary, as well as looking at city-owned lands in Victoria. So again, helping, the folks that need to do this analysis really strategically identify opportunities for more housing within our built-up boundaries. And then lastly was the private sector example. Again, developer Dan, who needs to see built form impact and model out those various housing outcome scenarios to understand what his risk might be, to understand if projects are viable or not. And so this mosaic sort of represents how we think about all of these different professionals who are trying to address the big challenges that we face, and then how our tools can help them in their day-to-day work. So again, I really firmly do believe that in order to succeed in solving this housing supply problem, so that 10 years from now, we're not all seeing the same headlines in the news still, our thesis is that everyone needs to be at the same table around the same data. And the key is making sure that the right people have the right data at their fingertips to make those decisions. We've got a vision that by making this process easier for all of our professionals, we can start seeing more of a variety of housing types and options and outcomes being delivered sooner. And again, I really think that in this way, we can all win and build better cities for all of us. So we've got one last poll before we move to a Q&A. And again, I think we've still got 10 minutes, so right on schedule. Right.
All right. Lots of questions. This is good. I'm typing as fast as I can. Thank you all.
Do I have to read? I can't read and talk at the same time.
Well, do you think that what you saw at today's webinar could be helpful to your organization? So we're just going to leave that one up. We're not going to share results, so we can keep rolling right into the next thing.
All right, so before we get into the Q&A, I'll just make a couple of notes. We will be sharing a link. You're welcome to create a free account and play around. Again, we've been busy building out our data catalog, but it is still a work in progress. We were looking to increase the data that we've got for existing municipalities, as well as bring on additional municipalities. If you've got ideas and suggestions, bring it on. We'd love to hear it. If you would like to get more additional information, please get in touch with your account manager. We'd love to do a more detailed demo with your group. And again, we'd love to learn more about your challenges. So we've got lots of questions that we have for municipal partners across the country. All right, Catherine, questions?
Yes, this is such a great one, and I'm so glad that it came in right now because I don't need to type it out. How does Ratio City work with ArcGIS Urban?
Excellent. So again, we see them as complementary, but they are not right now integrated. So ArcGIS Urban is for that first section. Remember we talked about the different responsibilities that planners have. So for the planners who are revising and reviewing their planning policies, That's where ArcGIS Urban comes in. So this is for the policy groups. And again, they're the ones that need to understand the various scenarios. If we allow 6 stories in this district, what does that mean? And so urban works in that use case. Ratio City is for what is allowed right now under the current enacted zoning. So urban is much more forward and future looking, and Ratio City is about right now. That being said, we are definitely looking at potentials to integrate and to do some interoperability. So again, our tech team is definitely looking at it actively, and so we will be building that into our roadmap going forward. But I don't have anything to announce just yet.
All right. So a couple of questions about whether or not this is a separate product from Esri and if you can use the credits. And if the free trial accounts are going to be per person, yes, or per organization.
Okay.
And if you can share that with other people who aren't in the webinar.
Correct. Okay, so I'll start with the easy one. It's the free trial should be for individuals, I believe. Yes.
Yes.
So you are welcome to create an account, again, either using your corporate, using your corporate email, and you should get access to it. And yes, you're welcome to share. If you just go to our website, frankly, ratio.city, and do the free trial button, that'll take you also to the same spot. So you're welcome to share it outside of the participants today. We are new to the Esri Canada family, and so this is an Esri Canada product, and so it is not part of the the general Esri enterprise agreements. So it is sort of on top of that. It is a subscription product, and it is a product. It is not services. And so again, don't quote me if I'm wrong, but I believe the AP credits are for services, but I might need to double check with that. Again, our account managers can help us out with the details. Was there another part of that question, Catherine, that I missed?
No, I think you got it. Maybe we want to talk a little bit about municipalities contacting account managers, and also we have the private developer options.
Sure. So we do have two business models and 2 pricing models, because we do recognize that the public sector has different needs and requirements than the private sector. So for our private sector customers, again, they can reach out directly and book a demo with us through our website. And so we engage with them on a very regular basis. For municipalities, again, we understand you've got a lot on your plates, and you've got a lot that you need to get done in the next 6 months or so across the country. So what we want to do is through your account manager is be able to talk to the planning groups. And so whether it is the folks doing that policy review who need to amend their existing policies to, again, meet some of these funding objectives. And again, ArcGIS Urban is a great solution for that. Or the folks in development review who are overloaded responding to all the email inquiries about what zoning applies to this specific site. Again, we can set up a discovery call. We'd love to hear about the challenges that your groups are facing. And then what we can do is come back to you and be able to show how our teams can help position you for success in terms of achieving some of these housing outcomes.
Okay. So I think you touched on this a little bit already, but any future sort of other data from things like MPAC or TerraNet?
We are always looking for additional data sources. And one of the challenges of our great country is that there's lots of variety from East Coast to West Coast about the way different provinces deal with land registry data, for example. So we have been looking at it. We are actively looking at that. We're also looking at additional demographics data. We're looking at data about social equity measures, or just describing more about complete communities. And so, making sure that we can describe where the current infrastructure is. So we've got a lot of data that we want to go after, but right now we are focused on planning policy and, again, expanding our scope across the country. Yes, parcel and ownership information is ideal. However, we do recognize that moves slowly. We're we'll keep moving on it, and again, hopefully be able to report progress next time we have a webinar.
And can you just touch on the Quebec data being in French, but the platform being in English?
Excellent. Okay. So this is also on our roadmap. We do recognize, the province of Quebec has similar housing supply issues like the rest of the country. And so we have started bringing on data. So we started bringing on some preliminary data for Montreal, Quebec, Gatineau, Sherbrooke. The data is in French. Our interface is still in English. And so, but because we are reflecting the data that's coming in, the data itself and the links all go to the French sources of the data. And our team is prioritizing looking at getting a French language interface up. Again, I can't promise on timing, but we are definitely looking at doing that and being able to roll that out, hopefully by the end of this year.
Great.
Maybe soon.
And then just a few questions about linking or integrating with other Esri products such as City Engine or Urban.
Oh, okay. So right now there isn't the opportunity, but again, what we would love to do as part of this listening tour is talk to your planning groups and understand how you're currently using City Engine and Urban to think about where there could be, a use case to integrate. One of the things that we are looking at is definitely making sure that the underlying data can be shared easily, for example. But, is there an opportunity for, reviewing applications? Again, there's a lot of things that we get really excited about, but we want to hear from you. What would you like to see? So again, I would encourage you to get in touch with us. We'd love to talk to, specifically your Urban and your City Engine users. And let's talk, let's brainstorm, let's do a whiteboard session and figure out what the biggest opportunities that would support your work would be.
Cool. And then one final question. Sort of had a couple of questions about what the parcel data needs to look like. So if it was a smaller, like northern community, they're not dealing with land claims and buildings not done in clumps like subdivisions, but individual products. And then similar questions about, if municipalities need to have parcel data split up into proper lines, or if Esri and Ratio City can do it based on polygons and irregular shaped lots. Oh, we have so many irregular shaped lots, yes.
Oh, we do have lots, yeah. So I think we prefer polygons and the irregularly shaped lots, yes. So absolutely, if you've got parcel boundary fabric, and again, even if it is not in the public domain, if you have access to it for your own business purposes, you can upload it for your own business purposes in a private and secure way. So we can do that. For smaller municipalities, absolutely. If you've got that parcel boundary fabric, again, we can help you, or even you can upload that data yourself, or your GIS group can help. It is a fairly simple process and it can be uploaded. Most of our tools, again, are more for that infill type development. And so if you are doing a 200-acre master plan site, Ratio City is frankly not going to help you. You do need Urban for that, or you do need, again, more complex CAD or BIM software for that. Ratio City is specifically for those smaller infill projects. I've got a site here, maybe I can get 2 towers in, or maybe I do some stacked towns and a mid-rise. So you can do multiple buildings. So we have been focusing on the medium and larger cities right now. We think that there is some value that we can bring to smaller municipalities, but we haven't had a chance to listen to you very much yet. So we would love to stay in touch and hear about some of the challenges that the smaller municipalities are facing as well. Yes. All right, are we wrapping it up?
I think you got them all. If I missed
okay.
any, I'm very sorry. It was great questions. And I think we got them all. But again, our website is a fantastic place for this. I'm going to post where you can sign up for the trial. Sorry, Monica, I don't mean to steal your thunder there.
No, I was going to say, if you could put the the links in the chat, that would be great. And again, take a look at our website, or again, grab a screenshot of Catherine and my contact information, and feel free to get in touch. So thank you all for spending some time with us today. And again, hope I was able to provide some new information for you and spark some conversations at your municipalities. Thank you all.